Okay, welcome everybody to Writers to Writers. I'm Suzanne Lieurance,
And I'm Simon Rose.
and this is actually part three of a segment on how to get seen by more readers because we've talked about how writers struggle with visibility. And in the past episodes, we've offered you some tips on how to get noticed so that people know you and your books exist.
Well, that's right. I mean, we discussed things like how to get what to include on a website and how you should blog, and if you've got a newsletter, you should have that going out regularly, at least once a month.
Right. And we also mentioned that sometimes the word newsletter can be a little intimidating to people who are just starting out. And so you don't have to have a lengthy newsletter. Sometimes you just have something like a weekly update or a regular update, if you want to call it, where you just email people with a short couple of paragraphs.
Now, that's what you do with this thing called the morning nudge, isn't it?
Sort of, yeah. I send out every weekday morning a little nudge, I call it, to get people to write. And so, what it is, it's a little tip or a paragraph or so, about a couple of paragraphs with a little tip that's related to our month's theme. So, for example, this month, our theme at writebythesea.com is about flow and writing. So, today's tip was something about how to get in the flow. And then I'll also offer another resource. Sometimes it's another free resource or just a suggested post to a blog, something I think you would benefit from reading about. But other times it might be a product or something. So, for example, today's nudge that went out, I had a tip about writing and flow. But since that's something that a lot of people really don't understand how to get in flow and how they can have that happen consistently. I can't talk today. The theme for that this month at Right by the Sea has blog posts, but also I have a monthly magazine called Manifesting Monthly, and the theme for it this month is also writing and flow. So if anybody wants to know a lot more about how to write and flow, that magazine is focused solely on that topic, and they can get that at my website, writebythesea.com. So the nudge is sort of my way to connect with people, offer them tips and things, offer them ways to get to know me a little bit better, work with me some more, maybe purchase some of my products or services, or sometimes I'll do affiliate products for other people or just, link to other things. And then also things like you have written articles for writebythesea.com. So in the morning nudge, I might put a link to those and say, read Simon's article today about whatever it was you have up. So a lot of ways I can use that to connect with my readers, not just people who might buy my books or whatever, but people who are interested in my coaching programs and things.
Well, it sounds like there's lots of interesting stuff there. Now, and another way to get your name out there, of course, is networking. Now,
Mm.
and some people might think, what does that mean? What does networking mean? Well, there's lots of online groups. Goodness, there are so many online groups that you can belong to. But there's also very likely to be groups that you can belong to in person. I
Mm.
mean, I know that. This doesn't have to be really, sort of big and formal and organized things like festivals and conferences and all this sort of stuff going on. Sometimes these can just be very informal gatherings, and it's a great way to meet other writers, whether they're nonfiction writers or business writers or novelists or short stories or whatever, really. And sometimes it can be, however, it can still be intimidating for newcomers. But I certainly found it when I was starting out and I just had the one book that was coming out. I found that my local writing community was very welcoming of new people. I don't even know how they heard about me. I must have been very fortunate at the time. I think my first book was reviewed in the local paper, I think.
Mm.
Many years ago now, it seems, and somebody had contacted me, and and invited me to their house for a barbecue, I think, or something. And they said that somebody else was going to be there, and maybe I knew them. And I thought, well, I don't know these people at all, but I mean, thank you very much. And I went along, and it went on from there. And I mean, are you doing, you do sort of networking? Obviously, you must do online groups and things, but do you connect with people in person as well?
Yeah, not as much as I used to because I'm so busy. But when I was first starting out as a children's writer, I joined SCBWI, Society of Children's Book
Oh,
Writers
yes.
and
Yeah.
Illustrators. And it's funny because sometimes you'll join something and you end up running it almost, because when I joined, I lived in Missouri, but it was right on the edge of Kansas and Missouri. So I had to join the Kansas section or chapter of SCBWI because the Missouri one was across the state in St. Louis. And the guy who was running the Kansas chapter just really wanted to quit because he'd been doing it for a long time. So once I joined and I helped him do the newsletter and everything, eventually he asked me if I would take over. So I did. And that chapter was such a great way to get to know people. And I tell people, don't be afraid to do something, join and end up not necessarily running it, but being part of whatever program you're in because you get all kinds of opportunities. Once I joined SCBWI and took it over, I got a call one day from a publisher who said they were looking for someone to write a children's guide to Kansas City. Did I know anyone? Well, I said, sure, I could do it. And that's how I got my first book contract. So don't be afraid to step up a little bit, get out of your comfort zone just a little bit, and be able to do things. Another type of group you can join that they have all over the place is called meetup groups. And you just go to meetup.com online, meetup.com. And then you type in, you're looking for writers groups in your area. And then all kinds of different groups will come up. Maybe you want to be in a fiction group or business writing group or children's writing group, and you'll see different ones there. When I was writing mostly for children, there was no children's meetup group in my area, so I just formed one. And that's the other thing with Meetup. If you don't see what you like there, just form a group. It's interesting to see how maybe other people in your area, whoops, sorry, are interested in something like that and would be glad to join with you. We mentioned, I think, last time too, about how no matter what genre you write in, there's probably some local groups or at least national groups for that. So science fiction writers, fantasy writers, I'm sure they've got groups, children's writers, mystery writers, romance writers. Just look for your specific genre and then, you're going to be networking, but think of networking, I think, when you're first starting out, particularly as getting to know your genre more, getting to know the publishing world a little bit better. You're not doing it so much to make connections that people can do stuff for you, although that does happen. But you want to do it so that you're kind of in with the groove and you're learning more about your genre and the publishing world as a whole. And then two, when you get in groups, when I was in that first group in SCBWI, we started, some of us in our local area there, we formed a little critique group of people that were in the Kansas SCBWI. And that group was so valuable to me because we had a few published people in that group. And I always tell people when you're looking for a critique group, try to find one that has at least a few people who are published in the genre you want to write because they're really going to help you. And it wasn't long after I got in that group and started getting critiqued by other published writers that I became published myself. So I think, yeah,
Yeah, well, I have a thing I call the writers circle,
okay.
that I, it's just local, very local actually, it's very small really. I ran it just at my local pub, really,
Oh, that's
once a
cool.
month. Once a month, and we used to get quite a few people before COVID came along, and then it was difficult to get it going again. after COVID had subsided.
Oh,
But now
yeah.
it's just once a month, and we get together. There's a few people are published with quite a lot of books. Some people are just starting out.
Mhm.
Um, I get inquiries through my website or through social media sometimes, and people who've heard about it, and I tell them that it's very informal. We just get together and talk about writing and books and the publishing world and things like that. But there is one condition:
Mm.
they have to come prepared to tell us about what they're working on. There's no
Oh.
exceptions here. We need to know what they're working on at the moment without giving any secrets away. But let us know, well, what are you working on? Because we might be interested in giving you a bit of advice and tips and things like that. So it's only once a month. I've got to send out the invitation, I think, uh, sometime next week for the one that's in mid-July, and we take it from there. And it's another way to uh, get noticed and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, asking them what they're working on, because
Oh
that way
yes.
you don't get writers in the group or people in the group who aren't really writing anything. They're just coming to kind of feel like they're a writer, because you really want people to be writing to get the most out of the group. So I think that's good. Now you also mentioned last time we talked, and I know you do this a lot, is including interviews with other authors on your
Yes.
blog. And you do that. You and I've done that, kind of swapped. I've had my interview with you on your blog. Your interview with me has been on my blog, or vice versa. Tell us a little about that.
Well, it's not an official term particularly. I just invented it myself in terms of I call it a blog tour.
Okay.
In that what it can be is I will do an interview. Well, actually, no, the author will write their own interview. They'll as if I was interviewing. I say,
Right.
"So, Suzanne, you've got a new book coming out. What's it all about?" And but you would write, you would do the thing,
Uh-huh.
and I would, in return, I would create one myself as if I'd written it. And I would send it to you for you to put on your blog, and vice versa. Now, these things they could appear at the same time, within not on the same day particularly, but within the same week on each other's blog, but not necessarily. It can just in the same month. It doesn't really have to be at the same time.
Mhm.
And the beauty of the blog tour is that I would get noticed by people who didn't, as we've said about visibility, they didn't know I existed. Well, who's this guy? I've
Right.
never heard of him, and vice versa. With say your book would be on my blog, there'd be an interview there, and
Mhm.
you'd be getting noticed by a whole new audience. So I found it to be very useful for everyone, and so it's something that I think again helps with the visibility that we've talked about.
Sure, yeah. And we've done those at Right by the Sea. I've even arranged, we call them either blog jogs or blog tours. Now, the ones that we've done have been more than a single post. It might be a 5 day tour where every day for 5 days, if you are one of the authors or writers taking part in the tour, you need to have a post for us, okay? And then we will share it on different sites. So, for example, if we've got 5 people on the tour, on Monday, each person is going to write maybe just a little blog post about who they are and what they're writing. Okay, and then that'll go up on different sites and stuff. Then on Tuesday, they'll do a post about something else related to something they do, so that they have a total of 5 blog posts, and they're going out to all these different blogs. And then all of those 5 people that are on the tour, they connect to each of the other tours. So, for example, if on my blog today, I've got a interview with you, at the end of the interview, I'll put read tomorrow's post with Simon at, and it'll tell me where to go tomorrow. to read another post with you. And then the next day, that person's post will say, and now Wednesday, check out Simon's post at whatever. And so they really get to know a lot about that author in little segments. So they're not having to just sit there and read, for a long time. But they're also going to different sites. And like you said, when your stuff is posted at different blogs, then you get a whole new readership because somebody who reads your stuff at my blog maybe never heard of you before, but when they go to my blog and find out about you, then you've introduced them to you.
Well,
So
that's it, isn't it? Well,
yours.
that's the thing. I mean, and I know we've talked before, probably more than once on here, is that how if you're constantly trying to push your
Yeah.
books and your services and all that sort of stuff, it can be a huge turnoff for some people, and they might, whether they'll tell other people not to tune in, I don't know, but they probably certainly not tune in themselves, and they'd be turned off by it. But you should still include. Pictures of if you've got a website, a blog, and things like that. Include photographs of yourself at different events, whether it's signing books or just you're just there in some sort of scene at some conference or something like that. Because
Mhm.
that would help for you to helps you build credibility as an author, makes you see, oh, this person actually does write books and everything, and it again, it all helps uh, with getting you noticed and keeping you visible.
Yeah, and I think the main thing we talked about it last time was make sure that you're offering something to the people who come to your blog that they find valuable. Just it could be entertainment. Um, for example, a lot of times people who have blogs they write for children and they say, well, what could I include on my site for children if they've got to buy the book to read my stuff. And I say, well, sometimes maybe just write a short story that you've got up there they could read for free, or do a puzzle they could download, or a word search or something. You just want to keep thinking, why would people want to keep coming back to my blog? And a lot of times, too, people just like to get an idea of what your life is like as a writer. So when you're saying post a picture of you at a conference or selling your books, like the other day you had some pictures up on your Facebook page about where you were. I think you went to, did you go to the musical and that kind of thing? Or where were you dancing or something? I saw some pictures of that.
Oh,
Where was that?
yes, I was. We have our local. We have the Calgary, where I am in Canada. We have the Calgary Stampede. It's an
Okay.
annual sort of cowboy country music
Oh,
festival type thing. And I'd
cool.
gone there with a friend of mine to a big breakfast brunch type thing, and she took a picture of me dancing with the cowboy crowd, and I
Yeah.
just posted that on social media, and I got a few comments and things like that, which was very nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you can also do things like that on your blog, like just with a little post that says something like, writers, it's not all just sitting in alone at your desk writing. You've got to have some fun and do some other things too. And then you put, some of the things you've done. So there's all
Well,
kinds
that's interesting
of
that you say that about sitting alone at your desk writing, because as we record this particular podcast this week, I've spent probably around 3 solid days in front of this computer
Wow.
working on somebody else's book, and probably spent probably a bit too much time staring at the screen because I've been starting at 7 in the morning and finishing
Oh,
at 10
yeah.
o'clock at night with only
Ooh.
short breaks. So it's been quite a long time. But the other thing you mentioned there, which was also quite interesting,
Uh,
was word search puzzles. I created those for my first 8 books, and they used to. I don't know why they're not on there anymore, but they used to be a page on my website for each book has got, they've got pages for reviews and different things that are linked to them in the drop down menu on the website. And I'm sure there used to be one for the word search puzzles for these first 8 books. And I do have some paper copies that I take to events. I print them off on my printer on cardstock, and I take them there as giveaways to when kids buy the books and things. So I should probably get the pages live again on my website so they're there.
Yeah, that's a good thing too, is updating your stuff all the time, making sure
Yeah,
stuff is
yeah.
there that it used to be and that kind of thing. Okay, so I guess today what we're trying to get people to see is that, your website's your online home. It's a great resource or should be a great resource for your readers and a fun place maybe for them to go and they want to come back to. And also, they can't buy your books if they don't know you're around or they don't know
No,
you exist.
they cannot.
So you've got to get that kind of out there. So that's all we've got, I think, today, but hopefully we've got some other, tips today that people will find helpful. So thanks everybody for joining us for another episode of
And
Writer
before we
Director.
go, of course, before we go,
Okay.
you can learn more about me and my books at simon-rose.com. And where are you, Suzanne?
I'm at Right by the Sea, WRITE by the sea.com. But also, if you haven't gotten my morning nudge, that's the best way to get to know me for free. Just go to morningnudge.com, sign up for that free newsletter. You'll also get a little ebook that's free. You'll get that immediately. And then I have an
Okay,
online
excellent.
resource library. You'll get access to that too. So,
Excellent. So we shall see you next time.
okay, thanks everybody. Happy writing.
Bye.